My. Man, do I say I got a word for y'all, man? I got a word for y'all. I know it's been a while since I've really put out a word. I know it's been a while since the Lord has really poured something into my spirit. But man, when I tell y'all we are living in very dangerous and crucial times where we have to be at the forefront. We have to seek the Lord's face like never before. I mean, I'm telling you, we got to seek the Lord's face, man. We see everything going on in this country. We see everything going on around this world. We're seeing the wicked being exposed. There's just so much that's going on, and everything that the Lord has been pouring into me as of late has been aligning with everything that many of us have been seeing, whether it be through the news, via social media, all kinds of stuff, man. But I definitely want to get into this now. Really pay attention to this vid because I definitely, it's definitely gonna be a lot of revelation. It's definitely a lot of loopholes the Lord had took me through to sum up to this full revelation. But definitely pay attention so that you know what our Father is speaking to us in these times. So I want to say what I'm speaking about is a dream that I had, and I want to say I had this dream on the 16th of this month of March. And this night was very crazy because I had three dreams back to back. I had three dreams all in one night. But the Lord had given me such revelation on this one dream, and it had involved a celebrity. And oh yeah, before I start, like I usually say, take this back up with the Lord for confirmation, pray on it, meditate on it. You already know the deal. Let's get it. So, man, in this dream, I was in the room with my mom and I was in the room with my little brother. And we was all talking, but I don't know how this conversation came about. But my brother began to tell me how he had a sexual encounter with Beyonce. Yes, I'm telling y'all, Beyonce, y'all queen bee Beyonce. My brother had a sexual encounter with her as he was telling me that he did in this dream. And as my brother telling me and my mom this, we both just looking shocked. We both just looking like, how did you get in contact with her? And how did you end up having a sexual encounter with her? Like, what happened? And to basically prove that he had a sexual encounter with her, he was just showing us text messages of her, that he had with her. And he was showing that she was sending him nude photos of herself to him. As he shows us these text messages, he's going in deep detail about the sexual encounter that he had with her. And this is one of the most significant parts of the dream, but I don't know if this is before or after he was giving me details about the sexual encounter, but he began to tell me what her address was to basically give me proof that this is somebody that he was encountering. And as he showed me, or as he told me the address, I saw that the address said, I seen this vividly through my dream. The address said 2700 Babylon. Okay, yeah, I just felt the Holy Spirit as soon as I said that. I saw or I heard 2700 Babylon. And as he told me this, I began to tell my brother that she was a Jezebel, that she was a demon, and he looked shocked. He looked so shocked when I told him, and he looked like he had that face of like disappointment, like he knew he messed up for sexually encountering this woman. After all of this, the dream ended. Now, usually as of late, as God has been showing me numbers, as God has been, allowing numbers to pop up in my dreams, in my visions and things like that, I've been learning to look up these, numbers in the biblical context or in the biblical meaning of what they stand for. And so, I begin to look up, the number 2700 in the Greek's Strong's Concordance. I not only looked up the number 2700 in the Greek Strong's Concordance, but I also looked it up in the Hebrew's Strong Concordance to basically, just to get more revelation, to get more information about this number that was shown by the Lord. So first, I just looked up the Greeks, the Greek meaning. And the Greek name is kataoxio. And the meaning of the word kataoxio, it means to strike down with an arrow. So after I received that, I'm like, okay, I really don't know what this means, but I continue to research and go more further. And as I continue to keep going more further, I see the verses, Numbers chapter 24, verse 8, and Psalms chapter 10, verse 2. Now, the reason why I'm pointing out these scriptures is because later on down this revelation, these scriptures are going to make sense about the overall understanding of what God was showing me. So then I began to look up, 2700 in the Hebrew Strong Concordance. And that word was Katzar Mavith, which the definition stemmed up to a son of Joktan or also his descendant. So as I continue to go down, I look more even further, with this word. And I see that the origin of this word is two words just basically summed up into one word. And then you got, because the first word you got Katzer, and then the other word you got Mavith. So what do? I go and I look up the meaning of both these two words, Katzer and Mavith, both separately. And this is what I found out about the word Katzer. In Hebrew, it's the number 2691 in the Hebrew Strong Concordance. But it means enclosure or court. And the definition of an enclosure is an area that is sealed off with an artificial or natural barrier. And boom, from that word, I get the verse, 1 Kings chapter 20, verses 26, through 27, just 1 Kings chapter 20 in general. And then in Hebrew, I'll go to the word Mavith, and that is the number 4194. And the definition of the word Mavith equals death, or from the origin word Hazar Mavith, which equals up to, or which means village of death. So as you know, I'm looking all this up. I'm like, okay, now I'm kind of getting somewhere about everything that the Lord is showing me. But as I look up Mavith, I also get led to a scripture in Job chapter 27. That was Job 27 verse 15. And so as I'm getting all this revelation, now I have to break a lot of things down. Now I have to go in scripture. Now I have to study to see what the Lord is showing me and to see what God is, pointing me, to in regards to these scriptures. In the midst of all this, I keep hearing the Lord telling me, death to Babylon, death to Babylon, death to Babylon. It's just everything in regards to being, death to Babylon is what the Lord is speaking to my spirit during this time. And so, boom, as we go back to the Greek meaning, which is kataioxio, I go back to those verses of Numbers chapter 24 and Psalms chapter 10 to see everything that was going on. You feel me? And as I'm looking at Numbers chapter 24, this talks about Balaam and Balak. If anybody don't know who Balaam was a wicked prophet who was, basically trying to curse Israel, but he was doing it all for, the money. And, as Balak, the king of the Moabs, as his end goal was trying to curse Israel, Balaam's goal was just to make that bread. His goal was just to make that money, but he was willing to do anything he could to make the money. So throughout the book of Numbers, 2 times that Balaam and Balak tried cursing Israel, it always backfired and it never came to pass. And, when it came to this third time, Balaam agreed, but he told Balak to set up, some altars for him. As Balak is setting up the altars and Balaam is about to get ready to curse Israel, God ends up intervening and interfering, and he's speaking to Balaam. Because although Balaam was a wicked prophet, if you take a look at through the book, Balaam did hear from the Lord. And it's through these two verses of Numbers chapter 24, the two verses of verses 8 through 9, where God actually speaks to Balaam in regards to Israel. And what God was explaining, to Balaam is about how powerful Israel was when they have, the Lord of Israel on their side, and how they would, consume many nations and their enemies and break their bones, and that those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed, which is a promise that God had actually gave Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. And that was always a promise that God always kept, is that those who do harm to Israel will face harm, and those who do good to Israel will face good, good rewards and blessings. So if you guys really take actually a read of Numbers chapter 24, you will see that, Balak built up the altars for Balaam to curse Israel, but God flipped the tables and he used Balaam, who was also an enemy of Israel. He used Balaam to basically bless, Israel with those altars that they set up. So God basically used what the enemy was trying to use for bad for good. And Balak left mad because he couldn't curse Israel, and Balaam left mad because he didn't earn no money. And just on another note, if you take a close look at what God had told Balaam about Israel towards their enemies, you will see in verse 8 it says, and he will pierce them with his arrows. You remember I told you guys that kataxio means to strike down with an arrow? This is meaning of God's arrow of victory. This is where it's about to get good. Because in the midst, God also led me to 2 Kings chapter 13. And this is when the prophet Elisha was around. And that also was this around the time that prophet Elisha was around, but it was around the time that King Joash was king of Israel during this time. And if you guys, just read this chapter, you would know that, King Elisha was facing illness and he was about to die. And I think it was because of old age or something. But Joash was upset because he knew that the strength of Israel counted on a prophet such as Elisha himself. But Elisha ended up encouraging Joash and trying to let him know that everything that he was saying was false and that the strength of Israel would not be gone. So what did Elisha do for Joash? He showed him some arrows, and this was divinely illustrated to give him an example of what to do. Let me mind you, this will be very, very useful because around this time, the Syrians were trying to come and conquer Israel. They were trying to come and battle Israel and take over the land. And these arrows that Elisha was showing Joash was God's arrows of victory and God's arrows of deliverance towards for Israel in regards to their enemies. This battle with the Syrians would later go on to what I was talking to you guys about in 1 Kings chapter 20, when King Ahab was the king of Israel later on during this time, and where they also had defeated the Syrians. So as Elisha was showing Joash, this demonstration, he was telling Joash to shoot the arrows out the window and shoot it and strike it at the ground in faith. Now, the one thing that made Elisha mad was that Joash only shot the arrow and only struck the ground 3 times, which only meant 3 consecutive victories for Israel. And Elisha was expecting him to continuously strike the ground so that Israel will be able to win more victories in the upcoming future. And maybe Joash didn't strike anymore because of a lack of faith. Maybe he didn't strike anymore because he wasn't confident in his aim. He wasn't confident in his ability to be able to target his enemy and hit the enemy where he was supposed to execute penetration, to execute victory amongst the enemy. But what King Joash had to realize was that and this is the reason why Elisha was mad, is because Joash did not realize that by his confidence and by his faith, he was not only striking the ground of his enemies for himself, but he was also doing it for the whole nation of Israel. Behind his faith and behind his confidence and behind his execution, that's what led to Israel's breakthrough. That's what led to Israel's blessing. That's what led to Israel's victory over the enemy and deliverance over the enemy. I hope y'all catch into how everything's being summed up right now. So as I'm figuring out all this revelation, I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm starting to get what you're talking about. I'm really starting to get what the Lord is speaking to me about. But then there's more that I want to show y'all, because I hope everything is clicking right now. Everything is really about to start making sense in the field when I sum this all up. So as we continue to keep going, as I was stating to y'all about the word Mavith in Kasser Mavith, and how Mavith means death, or the origin word is Hazar Mavith, which equals village of death. This is where we go back to Psalms chapter 10, verse 2, and Kataxio. As you read through Psalms chapter 10, it is David expressing, his emotions. It's basically David expressing his concerns to the Lord about how he feels like the Lord is distant and how he feels like the Lord is allowing the wicked to get away with the things that they're doing to the innocent, to the poor, and to the helpless. And as I looked up 2700 in Greek, and I believe it was kataxio, it it quoted Psalms chapter 10, verse 2. And that says, the wicked arrogantly hunts down the poor. Let them be caught in the evil they plan for others. But if we go back into verse 1, David is asking, Lord, why do you stand so far away? Why do you hide when I am in trouble? So not only is he expressing his trouble, but he's also expressing for the trouble on the behalf of others that are being taken advantage of by the wicked. But this is also something that also caught my attention. This is how I say God strategically has everything separated, but it's like once you you solve it like a puzzle piece, everything sticks together. So you remember how I told y'all how Hazar Mavith means village of death, but Mavith alone equals death. So if you go down to Psalms chapter 10, the verses 8 through 11, it tells us how David says they lurk in ambush in the villages, waiting to murder innocent people. They are always searching for helpless victims, like lions crouched in hiding. They wait to pounce on the helpless. Like hunters, they capture the helpless and drag them away in nets. Their helpless victims are crushed. They fall beneath the strength of the wicked. The wicked think God isn't watching us. He has closed his eyes and won't even see what we do. David in this verse is describing the wicked like lions. And if you take a look in 1 Peter 5:8, it says the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. But not only do the wicked people crouch in hiding while they're doing the evil, wicked deeds to the poor and to the needy, they're expressing to themselves and they're doing the things and they're expressing to themselves like the Lord does not see what we're doing. The Lord is, he's not even watching the things that we're doing. Foolishly thinking these things and believing that the Lord does not see them, nor will they get caught. So this is where it gets good. And this is where I lead y'all to Job chapter 27. Job chapter 27 was stemming from Mavith, which equals death. And I'm gonna need y'all to read all these chapters and all these books that I'm stating to y'all, so y'all can get the revelation that God's trying to teach y'all. But just to give y'all the basic little runaround by Job chapter 27. In this chapter, Job's friends are accusing Job of having some type of hidden sins. And one of his friends expresses how the hope of the hypocrite is in vain. Basically expressing that the hope for a hypocrite is pointless. And that there is no hope in somebody who's a hypocrite. That there's no hope in anybody that's a liar. There's no hope for anybody that does evil and wicked deeds and hides their hand. Now, don't get me wrong. These friends of Job are actually accusing him of having hidden sins. And Job expresses to God how the same accusations that they are pointing out to him, or they're saying that is on him, he just prays that it will fall on their own heads. Although Job did agree with that the hope of a hypocrite is in vain. But the one thing that a hypocrite that has hope that is in vain, they don't call upon the Lord. And Job, throughout all the chapters in the book of Job, he had called upon the Lord. Although, yes, he did have his doubts, and although, yes, he did question, he still called upon the Lord. And as I was reading this, I was starting to feel how God was feeling about people nowadays. There are many people out here that when they go through distress, when they go through hard times, when they go through things on this walk with Christ, they have this expectancy as if, this walk with Christ is going to be cake, as if this walk with Christ is going to be sweet, and that they're never going to go through trials and tribulations. And during those times when they face persecution, during those times when they face trials, instead of going to the Lord in prayer, instead of falling to their face and seeking the Lord during these hard times, they become prideful. They become condescending. They neglect the Lord. They don't fall to their face. And it gives off the impression that the only reason why they sought the Lord, the only reason why they seek the Lord with all of themselves is to only get what they can get out of the Lord and not actually love him for him. And as we talk about this topic of the wicked and about them thinking they're getting away with the things that they're getting away with, the things that they feel like they're getting away with, this is one of the bones that the Lord has to pick with the wicked, especially with those who are greatly deceived by their wealth, who's greatly deceived by their idols, who are greatly deceived in their false hope. There is no hope for a hypocrite. The hope of a hypocrite is in vain. They believe their influential status. They believe their wealth is going to lead them onto the other side of glory, not knowing that the idols that they picked up on, the idols that they counted on, that they counted on the day of judgment, they're not only going to leave those things behind, but also God is going to allow for those idols. God is going to allow for them to call upon those idols, and those idols are not going to answer them. The idols are not going to be there for them at the end of the day. That very exact influential status, that very exact wealth, that very exact status that they count on, those idols that they count on, God is going to have them call on those idols for help, and they won't. And the reason why the Lord is expressing this is because the only time they sought the Lord is when it was convenient to them. We see this with so many people who are wicked. We see this with so many people who refuse to repent. They live a lukewarm lifestyle. They're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They only seek the Lord when it's convenient to them. They only seek the Lord when it's beneficial for their flesh, when it's beneficial to their life. But when adversity, but when trials and tribulations pick up, they're nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. And they don't seek the Lord, except instead they lean on their own understanding, and instead they get in their flesh and they become prideful, and they believe God was never there, when in fact God was there during their adversities. They just didn't give God a chance, and they quickly gave up on him. They believe their praises of men. They believe their influential status is their hope, is their God, is their idol. And because of their idolatry and because of them only depending on the Lord when it's beneficial to them, God is going to turn his face from them, and he won't even hear their prayers. You know how crazy it is that the Lord won't even hear your prayers because you turn your face to your idols, and he allowed you to be turned over to your reprobated mind. It's a scary thing to fall into the hands of the living God. But as we continue in this book of Job, starts to begin in verses 13 through 17. He starts to basically express, the punishment of the wicked. But the two verses that really stood out to me, and it connects with Numbers chapter 24 and how basically God was going to use whatever the enemy meant for evil for good, is verses 16 through 17, where it says, though he heaps up, and this is the enemy, though the enemy heaps up silver like dust and piles up clothing like clay, he may pile it up, but the righteous will wear it, and the innocent will divide the silver. I don't know if you guys ever read that verse, Proverbs 13:22, where it says that the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. So basically, like I told you guys before, the tables have turned. The tables are flipping in this hour, and I cannot wait to get to this last point so I can really sum it up to you guys, what the Lord is showing, because the Lord is good, and the Lord is really, really bringing favor, double portion to his children. But there's a step, and there's a necessary step that the Lord is looking for his children in this hour that we are currently living in right now. Also, another significant verse in Job 27 is verse 23, how it talks about how the wicked will be made a laughing stock in front of the whole world. And we see that today. And I want to continue to keep going because I can go on and on and on about it's so much revelation that it's just so much revelation that the Lord is showing me, y'all. I can go on and on and on for days about what the Lord has been showing me. Now, last but not least, let's go to 1 Kings chapter 20. And I'm also going to give you guys a quick runaround about 1 Kings chapter 20. I want you guys to actually read these things for yourself so that you can be able to understand it fully, and God can be able to give you the revelation that he needs to give you. I'm just summing up everything that the Lord has been showing me in this hour, so you guys can be able to connect the dots and go seek the truth for yourselves in what we're going through right now. So basically in 1 Kings chapter 20, this is around the time that King Ahab was king of Israel. And there was a Syrian king named King Ben-Hadad. Now, King Ben-Hadad had many requests. And as you read it, King Ben-Hadad was basically trying to bully King Ahab. He was trying to intimidate him, and he was, trying to send his men over to their homeland and to their nation to try to take possessions and things that rightfully belong to them. At first, King Ahab agreed, to certain things that King Ben-Hadad wanted to take, but then King Ben-Hadad tried to go even further and try to take advantage of the opportunity. And that's when King Ahab had to go to the elders and seek advice. While in the midst of that, the elders had told him not to do what King Ben-Hadad was requesting because he was nothing but trouble. So as you continue to go down the chapter, we see throughout all this that you know, King Ben-Hadad was seeking war. He was seeking war in regards to the nation of Israel. And he was very cocky because he had a very large army, and Israel didn't really have that much of a large army because they, were held captive because of their disobedience, and they were kind of, they were low on numbers. And so through the chapter, there was a first war. And through this first war, Ben-Hadad was caught off guard because him and the other leaders were drunk, and they didn't take time to prepare like Israel did, because God had them preparing before the battle even began. He had them strategically putting out a plan, and it resulted to a mass slaughter of Syrians and a great victory for Israel, which eventually led Syria to flee. And this chapter, I feel like, as I was studying, was the most significant because it definitely had a lot to do with, in regards to the season that we're in, of what is being taken place right now. Because in verse 22 it says, after that Syria had got defeated, the prophet in which God used to instruct King Ahab, he said, "Go strengthen yourself, take note and see what you should do. For in the spring of the year, the king of Syria will come up against you again for a second time." So just when you thought that this victory was enough, the Syrians wanted to come back for more. Well, Ben-Hadad wanted to come back for more. King Ben-Hadad had convinced himself that God was the God of the hills, and that if they would have fought Israel on the plain fields, then they would have an easier victory. Now, back then, many of those nations that worshipped different false gods and pagan deities, they believed that a God could be a God of anything, a God of the hills, the God of the mountains, the God of the skies, the God of the clouds. They believed in things like this, not knowing that it was very much of a big insult to limit God and say God was just a God of the hills. And this is what allowed God for Israel to, have the next upper hand over the Syrians. And even if you go back to even the back in verse 17, the one significant thing that I noticed about verse 17 is how I told you guys that God had strategically, had brought out a plan for the first battle, and while the Syrians were caught lacking. That plan was to have the young leaders, the young army of leaders in Israel, to march first, and as soon as they marched, then the rest of the Israel army will follow behind them, and this will lead to great victory. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the NLT version, the key word that I noticed was March. As you guys notice, we are in the month of March right now. And this word March and spring is about to coincide to everything all around that God's been showing me, and what I'm about to fully explain to you guys right now. So boom, after the first victory, if we take a look at the two crucial verses of this chapter, is verses 26 to 27, where it says, "So it was in the spring," there we go again, "of the year that Ben-Hadad mustered the Syrians and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. And the children of Israel were mustered and given provisions, and they went against them. Now the children of Israel encamped before them like two little flocks of goats, while the Syrians filled the countryside." So basically, in the spring of that year, they marched to battle. Like basically, they marched to battle to fight against the Syrians. And when they noticed about the Syrians is that the Syrians had outnumbered them by a lot of soldiers. So I don't know if you guys remember when I said caster in Caster Mavith, the word caster meant enclosure or court. And when you're enclosed by something, you're basically boxed in by something. You're basically blocked off by a surrounding, by a barrier or something. As we see, the children of God, the children of Israel, were boxed in, and they were in a barrier full of soldiers. It said it filled the whole countryside. That's how outnumbered that Israel was. That's how outnumbered Israel was in regards to Syria. So you can only imagine how fearful or how doubtful or how discouraged Israel might have felt in that moment. But the Lord that they serve is far more greater than anything. As Syria, and this is the most crazy part about the chapter. As Syria thought they had the upper hand on Israel, on the day of battle, just on one day alone, the outnumbered Israelites had killed 100,000 of the Syrian soldiers on foot. After this had happened, because I'm pretty sure it shook the Syrians on how they just got crushed by such a small number of soldiers versus their big number of soldiers. It said that the king and 27,000 of the men had fled into the city of Epic, and a wall crushed 27,000 more men of the city. After that, it said in the last verse that Ben-Hadad fled and went into the city into an inner chamber. So as we can see, just like I said, if we go back, Numbers 24, when Balak tried to curse Israel, it ended up reversing on him. The tables had flipped. Just how it's described in Job chapter 27. The tables are flipping for the wicked that count on their idols, that count on their influence, and that their hope, the hope of a hypocrite, is in vain. So the tables are flipping on them. As we saw in Psalms chapter 10, all the wicked and all the wickedness and all the unrighteousness that the wicked is doing to the poor, to the helpless, to the needy, because they feel like they're outnumbered, because they feel like they're outweighing them. They feel like that God does not see their evil deeds and everything that they're doing. But those tables are about to flip. And last but not least, we see in 1 Kings chapter 20 that even in the first battle, King Ben-Hadad was he was very prideful. He was unorganized. He was unstrategized. And he believed because he was more powerful. He believed that he was more powerful than the Israelite army because he had more numbers. He had great confidence and great pride in himself, and thought that during the second battle, he thought he had God all figured out. He thought that because he had outnumbered Israel, that he would be able to defeat them. But as we see, 100,000 of his foot soldiers got killed in one day, and 27,000 men, a wall fell on 27,000 men, crushing and killing them. And it led to his demise, and it led him to hide in the inner chamber of the city. The table had turned for this wicked ruler. And as I'm trying to put this revelation together, the Lord just pieces this all together to me. The reason why God was telling me death to Babylon, death to Babylon, death to Babylon, is because we're living in a time where the state of this world, the state of this country, the United States that we're currently living in, this system, the system of Babylon, the structure, which has been built up on the foundation of innocent blood, which has been built up on the foundation of bloodshed, of innocent children, is about to crumble, is about to fall at its very last bit. We see with these evil, wicked rulers of this world. We see with the politicians. We see the things coming out with Pizzagate. We see the things that's coming out with the sex traffic rings. We see all these things that are coming out in the sacrificing of children, the sacrificing of the innocent. They're prowling on the children. They're trying to manipulate God's children in this hour, whether it be through music, whether it be through television, whether it be through all these things. They're trying to program people. We see that they're prowling around like roaring lions, trying to seek the innocent, trying to destroy those that are of the Lord. And we're seeing that the transfer is happening. We're seeing that the flip is happening. We see that the Lord is flipping the switch on the wicked, because the wicked's time is up in this hour. People just have to pay attention with the things that's going around this world. Things like P. Diddy, things like Drake Bell, things like all this stuff that's happening. Celebrities coming out that they were being essayed. People like Diddy are being caught in there, and his home is being raided. We see celebrities being exposed, politicians being exposed, the wicked being exposed left and right, because because the flip is about to switch. The harm, the bloodshed that the wicked has placed upon the innocent, the way that the wicked has profited off of God's people for so long, in this hour, it will no longer be no more. The way the wicked has been trying to get the church to turn against each other, trying to get the church to fall in deception, fall in wickedness, fall in confusion, fall in complacency, fall in offense, fall in division. The Lord said he has had enough. And Pharaoh, take your hands off of my children. God said vengeance is his. There's no more running. There's no more hiding in your wickedness no more. I don't care if you're a celebrity. I don't care if you're a politician. I don't care if you're a regular person. Do not be caught up in the crossfire in this time. I believe my brother in the dream, I believe he represented those that may not be walking this walk with Christ, but might be representing a prodigal, meaning might be representing a person who has strayed away from God or who has the heart for God that God is calling on. But what is happening is that these people of God that might not be in the faith right now, they're coming into agreement with these celebrities. They're coming into agreement with the open doors of the wicked, like the music, the television, the drugs, the sex before marriage, the fornication, the adultery. They're coming into agreement with these things. And because they have a lack of knowledge, they don't know that the doors that they're opening are evil. They don't know that the doors they're opening are harmful to them. But what this evil system has done, it has created a stigma. It has created a narrative. It has created an agenda, a message that gives to you unrighteousness is okay. Doing whatever you want to do is fine. Not following the Lord is okay. Sin is a good thing. And what it's doing is it is creating strongholds. It's creating generational curses. It's creating people to fall and walk into bondage. And that's why God is calling for us to come out from amongst these people like Beyonce, come out from amongst these politicians, come out from amongst idolizing the people and idolizing the things of the system. Come out of Babylon, come out from amongst them. Because the same way how the fire, the darts and the arrows of God's victory is about to strike the enemy and everything that the enemy has built on or stood for these centuries, those same things are going to strike you, and it's going to cause severe torment and severe judgment in the long run. You do not want to be caught up in the crossfire of what the wicked is going through. There is not only a judgment of the wicked, but there's also favor and blessings for the righteous. But I don't think I actually mentioned this, but when it was talk about spring in 1 Kings 20 and about how that, God had told the prophet to tell King Ahab about the upcoming spring. Spring actually in the Hebrew lunar calendar is actually basically the Jews' version of New Year's. It means new beginnings. It means restoration. It means fruitfulness. And in the month of March, God needs his people to start marching. In the month of March, God needs his people to stand up and rise up. He needs the prophets, the evangelists, the prophetess, the pastor, the teachers. He needs people to start getting on their post. Because what we don't realize is that there's many people that still need salvation. There are still people that need to learn Jesus. They need to know Jesus. Not just learn Jesus, but need to know Jesus, need to be in a relationship, need to come to repentance. Because many people don't know the doors that they're opening up. Many people are falling by this. Many people are falling or are under this system. Many people are dying into agreement with this system. Now, a lot of people don't know Jesus. So they're leaving knowing this system, knowing the ways of Babylon, drinking from her cup, and not knowing Jesus at all after they die. God is saying, I need you to march forward. I know you're tired. I know you feel like the victory has been won by the enemy. I know you feel like the enemy has the upper hand on you. I know you may feel outnumbered, but God is needing for his people to stand on their post, and he's needing for them to march in victory. In this month of March, he is needing for his people to march. Just how Elisha was mad at King Joash for not continuously striking the ground of the enemy. God is in needing for you to continuously strike the enemy until it hurts. Strike the enemy in victory. Strike the enemy until you see full deliverance in your family, full deliverance in your relationship, full deliverance in your life. God is needing for us to strike, continue to keep striking until the enemy is full down and fully dead and gone. There's no more time for complacency. There's no more time for procrastination. We have to preach the gospel, and we have to reach the lost souls who are under this system or who have come into agreement with the system. If God is putting a vision or a dream on your heart, if God is telling you to give a warning out to that brother or sister, if God is telling you to call out these wicked, evil rulers, these celebrities, these people, get out the message, because we don't have as much time as you guys think we have. The days of loving God only when you want to be blessed is over with. The days of teeter-tottering and choosing the world and choosing God at the same time, those times are over with. You can't be a friend of the world and be a friend of God. You got to choose one. So take this time to think. Take this time to reflect on what the Lord is showing you in these scriptures and everything that I point out to you. There are innocent people being harmed. There are innocent people who are leaving this earth not knowing Jesus. And that's what the enemy does. The enemy doesn't care that they lost. The one thing that they do care about is hurting God. And hurting God is the simple fact that there are people who are going to leave this earth and not know Jesus. That there are people that's on this earth currently that are going to lose their life not knowing God. But this is why God says we need to march forth. This is why God says we need to not procrastinate. We need to proclaim the gospel, the truth of the living God, the truth of who Jesus is and who he made us to be. That Jesus Christ was sent down on this earth. He died for our sins. He conquered and defeated death so that we could be made the fullness and righteousness through him in the eyes of God. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. It's all about that belief in your heart, y'all. God is looking for the heart posture. God is looking for your heart in this hour. He is looking to see who has faith and who has a relationship with him. It's not about your works. It's not about it's not about how much of a perfect believer you are, because nobody is perfect. All fall short from the glory of God. But it is about your dedication. It is about your relationship. It is about your heart posture. It is about, do you trust in the saving works? Do you trust in the finished work that Jesus Christ did on the cross? These times are getting wicked. Things are only going to get worse. And as we know, as I've been seeing, and as God was showing me, I believe it's in Revelation 6:8. It talks about the death spirit. The death spirit is upon the land. We see people dying day by day. We see there are wars, rumors of wars. And the death is not only upon the land, but it's also following upon the wicked in this hour, which is why you see the wicked in turmoil, which is why you see people being exposed left and right. God is not playing with us no more. So march forth in victory. Continue to strike the ground of the enemy until you see deliverance, until you see a great victory. We know that our victory is in the Lord. We know that we boast in the victory of the Lord our God. And like I said before, I believe my brother represents the people that are lost, but that God is still trying to reach through us. God is looking for many people who don't know him to fall at their face, surrender, so he could be able to close them doors. He could be able to shut off the access, shut down and renounce and denounce the witchcraft that has been placed upon your lives because you have come into agreement with things and with people that mean you no good. These celebrities y'all sit down and y'all worship, they're benefiting and they're profiting off of your pain. They're benefiting and they're profiting off of you. And they're doing it in such a slick and spiritual manner. But all it's doing is leading you. All it's doing is just leading you to eternal damnation and no separation from God forever. That is the whole entire goal. It's just masked up in entertainment. It's just masked up in music, television, clothing, everything. But as the wicked is being exposed, God's people will be being blessed. The wealth of the wicked is being stored up for the righteous. So, like I said, the tables are flipping. God's people will come out and remain victorious. Like I said before, spring represents new life. Spring represents restoration, new beginnings, reconciliation. God is restoring things back in this hour. He is bringing out fresh new beginnings in this hour. He is bringing out double favor and blessings towards his people in the midst of chaos. So keep your faith in the Lord, keep falling to him, and allow the Lord to give you direction and guidance. And if the Lord is instructing you to do something in this hour, please just do it. Obedience is more crucial now than ever than it has ever been before. So don't be on the losing side, man. Choose Christ. Choose salvation, because the kingdom of God is at hand. I really, really hope that this word really resonated with somebody today. Like I said, take this word back up to the Lord. If you guys need to replay this video over and over again, do so you can allow it to marinate in your spirit, so you can have some type of knowledge of what's going on in this hour. So yeah, I love you, and so does God. God bless.